Hello there, I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru, and this tower here is the DinoPC Raptor. It's a gaming PC, and as you can see it's liquid cooled and packed with high-end kit. It would be more accurate to say it is the latest Raptor, because I'm quite sure there was previously an X79 Core i7 Raptor. This is the latest X99 with 5th gen Core i7, so DDR4 memory, and a pair of GTX 980 Ti graphics cards. So heaps and heaps of components. Now this is a Thief benchmark that I previously run, where we got 59.3 average frames per second. I'll just rerun the benchmark so you can see it zipping along in front of your very eyes, because there's nothing quite like seeing. Now this is Thief running at 4K with high quality settings, that's 4x anti-aliasing. If you play Thief at 4K on a typical gaming PC, I would say you'd be quite lucky to get 15 frames per second, maybe 10 frames per second. 4K is an absolute PC, that's at high quality settings anti-aliasing. Nonetheless, turn off anti-aliasing, you're still not going to get a great frame rate. 4K is a PC breaker. If you haven't got a GTX 980, you can pretty much forget about it, but you need more than GTX 980 to get decent frame rates. And as you can see here, it's going along beautifully. So, what do we have? This is a list of components, unfortunately, there's no way around it. So, it's a Core i7 5930K, which typically runs at 3.5 GHz, a bit of turbo. In this instance, overclocked to 4.5 GHz. That's a 6-core, 12-thread processor, so way beyond a regular Core i7. You've got the two GTX 980 Ti's as mentioned, each with 6 GB of memory. They appear to be pallet cards, a bit tricky to be certain because the stock coolers have been removed, replaced with EK Waterblocks. So I'm reading from the part numbers, I'm reckoning they're pallets. The stock 980 Ti core speed is 1000 MHz. These run at 1220, so that's north of 20% overclock, more boost. Memory, instead of running at 1753 times 4, is 1928, so 7.7 GHz. Significant, but it's the core where we're really looking at the benefit. And there we have it, and this time the average 59.1 and minimum 50.5. So it hauls along at 4K, no problems whatsoever. What else? Yes, liquid cooling. There's a bunch of stuff going on in there. I asked DinoPC's tech bloke what he'd used, because he's done much more than simply take a kit of stuff and just nail it on. He's gone for a Watercooled Heat Killer 4 CPU Waterblock. I looked up that particular model. There are 3 different types. There's a high-end sort of coppery thing, there's a mid-range pro copper anthracite they call it, which is nickel, and then there's a lower end job which has got a plastic covering to it. This is the anthracite or nickel job. He's got EK water blocks for the graphics cards, which are nickel. There's an EK bridge between the two graphics cards. These are spaced with a decent gap between them. EK does a number of different bridges depending on the spacing of the graphics card in your system. We've got a pair of alpha cool radiators, 240mm front in push-pull, to 360 at the top. They're 45mm thick. You can see all this in the photos in Kit Guru. So those are hefty, great big radiators. It's an EK D5 pump reservoir combo at the front. This is one of the very few things in the system I wasn't mad keen on, is that the bracket for that reservoir looks to be slightly off vertical. It doesn't look entirely correct. It's a tiny amount out. It's just by eye. It's like, not so sure about that. The coolant, Mayhem's pastel red coolant, it looks like a milkshake. I do kind of like it, but I sort of prefer something a bit more sparkly, a bit more wine-like. So I cannot complain about the choice of coolant. It's not the one I would have taken off the shelf, and of course there are hundreds and hundreds available. So that's a personal thing. Tygon cooling, a load of alpha cool connectors. The fans, Phobia G silence, they're rated to 1600 RPM, however in this system they're running slightly less than 1000, around 960 RPM, and at the front you can't see it on these cameras. Unfortunately I can't shift the system around since the feet are too widely spaced to put on the turntable, but photos on Kit Guru as per usual. The fan controller It's about £60 worth of Lamptron FCF V3 in the optical drive bay, load of rotary controllers so you can individually set everything to your heart's content. You can also have the colours change in rock through a number of different options. All looks good, or it kind of just goes to sleep and just sits there just working. In terms of the cooling, there is nothing you can complain about. As I say, that bracket I don't massively like. The choice of coolant, that's a personal thing. Other than that, it just works epically well. Motherboard is a Gigabyte X99 Gaming 5P, which is about £230 worth. You've got some Corsair Vengeance DDR4 running at 3000 megahertz. That Core i7 is overclocked. The case is, and you may not have guessed this by first glance, it's a Corsair Obsidian 750D, a good case, no two ways about it. They've put a kind of vinyl wrap on it, which at first glance you might think is a sort of lizard skin. I'm assuming it's because it's DinoPC, it's a kind of dinosaur look. But either which way, there's a kind of funky sort of patterny texture thing going on. Neatly done that. Power supply, interesting. It's a Corsair RM850 watt power supply, gold rated. Now, that's £120 worth of power supply. It's not cheap. The thing is, that's an overclocked Core i7 5000 series with a pair of GTX 90 graphics cards. You might think 850 watts is nowhere near the mark. What with your 1200 watt and 1500 watt power supplies, you say? 850 watts, it works absolutely fine. And in fact, it's been very finely judged. When the system idles, and I'm rounding the numbers up here, the socket, the tower draws 200 watts. When you're running PC Mark 8, so regular office type utilities, 300 watts. 3D Mark and Thief, 500 watts. Thrash the back side off it with 8064. It's a stress test that's stressing the processor and the graphics cards both 100% simultaneously, and you're up to 780 watts. I would be startled if you got anywhere near that. I think you'd be much closer to that 500 watts for 3D Mark and for games. But that's the difference between gaming and real world, is that 780 watts and we're just shy of that 850 watts. So they did get to within about 90% of the rating of the power supply, and it behaved perfectly. I do not realistically think you're going to do that. I think 70% of the rating of the power supply is as high as most humans will get. So you could argue that they've cut that a bit fine. 850 watts is marginal, or you could say, blooming fine job. You can't get within 70 watts of the thing. You can't get above 90%, even caning the hardware. So fair play. I'm not personally certain I would have chosen, if I was choosing the components from scratch, the Corsair case. It's a fine piece of hardware. I've just come to love Fantex cases, and I think it would have helped the mount of the reservoir pump combo. In every other regard, I have no issue with the Corsair whatsoever. It's just purely the way that mount looks at the front. Other than that, a good case, very happy. All that cooling hardware, which is obviously the heart and soul, I mean obviously the graphics cards and the processor are the heart and soul, but the cooling system is what makes this system what it is. So the EK water blocks on the graphics cards, the Watercooled Heat Killer 4 CPU heat block, and then those alpha cool radiators, works incredibly well. At idle, the CPU 42 degrees. Under extreme load, the CPU 80 degrees. That's running a gigahertz overclocked, and yet 80 degrees, which in the great scheme of things is way shy. I mean, generally speaking, 100 degrees we would start to get worried. 80 degrees is way shy of that. The graphics cards idling 30 and 32 degrees. Under extreme load, 52 and 55 degrees. It has to be said, a decent liquid cooling setup makes your air coolers look like an absolute joke. This system behaves immaculately, and it's quiet. That's the thing, it's quiet. Now, what else strikes us about the system? That's all the main components gone through. There's a Blu-ray combo drive at the front, but that's about the only thing worthy of mention. Now, This system actually shipped with Windows 8.1 to us. The spec actually says Windows 10 because we're in that transition from Windows 8.1 to Windows 10 when they built this system. That's all fine. Clearly, when Windows 10 kicks into life properly, we have DirectX 12 and we have DirectX 12 graphics drivers, and we can see an actual benefit from Windows 10 and DirectX 12. This will be a truly wonderful thing. How much money? Well, that's a good question. £4,700. Ink fat. The thing is, all the hardware, if I was to buy it at retail and stack it up, would cost me, I reckon, £3,000. So we're not talking cheap stuff by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously, any kit bureau reader should be able to make a fair stab at building such a PC. As to whether you build it as neatly as this, that remains to be seen. The thing is, this is that they've carefully specced a whole bunch of components. They've obviously done a load of R&D, they've tried a load of things, and they've come up with this combination of parts, and the results work very well. That is not to say you couldn't choose different parts and get a similar-ish result. I'm quite sure you could. These components, they deliver. The overclocking it's actually a fairly subtle overclock they've gone for. The CPU is running at 32 times 125 megahertz to give you a 4.5 gigahertz. The CPU V-core 1.35 volts. Chipset's been left on auto. One of the obscure settings within the CPU VRIN external override, if you must know, has been bumped up by 0.1 volts. And the DDR4 is running at 1.35 volts rather than 1.2 volts. Those are about the only settings I could actually spot that have been changed, which is subtle to say the least. Clearly works effectively. But clearly, cooling the thing, liquid cooling it, has kept it all under control. So the extra oomph has to result in extra heat. The liquid cooling negates that completely. Should you buy all these components and build it yourself? Well, if you haven't got £4,700, fair enough. Question is, do you have £3,000 and the time and the knowledge to do it? Quite clearly, you're bypassing DinoPC's R&D if you buy these same components to do it yourself. That's obviously the case. Would you get as neat a PC? Very possibly so. The thing is, I suspect if you're in the market for spending £3,000 on a gaming tower plus your 4K displays and all the peripherals, then very likely you've got the thick end of £5,000. Because we're into a league of luxury most of us can't even imagine. So that's fair enough. So the DinoPC Raptor, it delivers in spades. Its performance is huge. It can certainly drive one 4K panel at any settings that you can imagine. I have no doubt it could actually drive a pair of 4K panels if you turn the setting down a tad. But the joy of 4K gaming is gaming quality up. One panel, doesn't have to be this baby 28-inch, it can be bigger than that if you want, but it pushes the pixels out, no problem. It looks great, the build quality is good. I'm happy with all the components. I'm not mad keen on that bracket at the front for the reservoir pump combo, but that, I think we can agree, is a trivial complaint, and the choice of coolant is not my personal preference. Again, a minor point. I have no doubt if you're telling me something different, I'm sure they'd use something different. So this is the award for Kit Guru. This is the DinoPC Raptor. This is luxury gaming at its best.